couple times. I was like, somebody touched my hand. Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing today? How's your Monday? Enjoy. We're going to have a very special start to our week. We have a guest with us. His name is Gaurav Rastogi, but he goes by Mr. G, so you can call him that. Mr. G is a guru in Hindu and meditation, specifically within the context of the Hindu tradition. You've been coming here for 3 years? Is it your third year coming here?
Third year.
I believe so, yeah. So he's been guest speaking here for a long time in the world religions courses. We first had you come here and talk about a specific topic, if I'm not mistaken, like God in everyday life, or God in like the busyness of life. Then I kind of decided to kind of go into more of like a praxis approach instead of like just listening to something, since that's what we do here anyways, just talk at you. We figured like, well, how about we get you to do something to kind of like immerse yourself a little bit more in the tradition. As I said, like I am a Catholic, and the book was written by a Catholic, so sometimes talking about Hinduism is tricky when we don't practice the tradition ourselves, and we don't have anybody who does that. However, Mr. G is a part of the Hindu tradition, so he practices Hinduism, but also is a teacher in meditation. So he is going to be doing both things, leading us into a meditative exercise, but also there will be time for question and answer at the end, at which time you are allowed to ask questions about either the practice or anything Hinduism in general. Okay. Now, obviously, keep in mind that, as I said before, everything we've learned in Hinduism comes from very mechanical and academic understanding, and it comes from more like traditional Hinduism. And Hinduism is extremely diverse. You go to different places in India, and you will find very different sets of Hindu practices, although all with an underlying cosmology, right? That said, the way we talk about things when we explore Hinduism academically is not the same way someone talks about things when they experience Hinduism. If someone were to talk about the Catholics, often at times when I hear people talking about Catholicism, in my mind I'm like, yeah, that's not true, you know? So remember that our academic understanding, how can we bridge the academic understanding with the experiential understanding of the tradition? So that's kind of what we're here to do today, okay? Towards the end of class, I would like to talk a little bit about our field trip, which is next week. It's going to be to the San Francisco Zen Center. Your parents should have received or will be receiving a permission slip online that they need to authorize electronically. If that permission slip is not authorized, you will not be going. Okay? And basically what we're doing is we're going to be walking and coming back. You will not be missing class. Okay? It will be only during my class time. Actually, for your block, you're actually going to be meeting there at 9:30. So 9:30, you're there. And then we're walking back. Okay. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to turn over to Mr. G. May you please more fully introduce yourself, what you do in the Bay, etc., and then take it away. And I'm going to be doing this on my computer. I'm going to take a time to do so.
Sure. How much time do we have, Ish, before we roll in? We have an hour plus?
A little bit more than an hour. So, yes. 10:55 is when the class is done.
All right,
so
okay.
Maybe we stop at 10:45. Then I have 10 minutes to do some of the businessy stuff.
Sounds wonderful. Namaskar, my name is Gaurav Rastogi, and to begin with, I'd like to begin with a prayer in Sanskrit. So if you'd like to follow along, please sit up straight, close your eyes. Sitting up straight in any posture is all right. No need for lotus or half lotus or quarter lotus or whatever other fractions of lotus. It's all right to sit in any comfortable posture with your back straight. Keep your back, neck, and head in a straight line. Close your eyes gently. Relax the expression on your face. Relax your shoulders. Relax your belly. I'd like to invite you to join me in chanting Om 3 times. If you'd like to stay out, it's all right. But if you'd like to follow along, just follow my cue, and I'll be chanting Om 3 times, and then the opening prayers, which is a verse in Sanskrit, which I'll describe later. If you'd like, bring your palms together in the center of your chest at your heart center. Gently press the palms together gently, touching the fingers together gently. And try to gently touch the back of your thumbs into your chest. And stay right here. Bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. Stay right here. We're going to chant Om 3 times. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. 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 Inhale and chant. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviriyam karavabhai, tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat, and gently cup your eyeballs to transfer that heat, and blinking, open your eyes and pull your palms back and open. Namaskar. So the meaning of this prayer is, may we both be protected, may we both be nourished, may our actions be radiant, and may our actions be energetic, may our knowledge be radiant, and may there be no differences between us. This is a very common prayer in the Hindu tradition. It figures in several scriptures. Often at the beginning of a scripture, when a teacher and the class are beginning to sit, similar to what we're having right now. And you could think of it as a sort of a legal contract, which is a contract to create a safe space around us, allowing for differences of opinion to come in, and yet allowing for those differences to work themselves out through the conversation. And so by the end, everything is well. And we end with the word Shanti. Shanti 3 times. Shanti means peace. And at 3 different levels, we're asking for peace. My name is Gaurav Rastogi, and I'm a software executive. I have a startup, and I advise other startups. That's what I do. I live in the Irish city of Dublin on the East Bay. So the green shirt is something that my kids wear all the time. My kids, once my son's working in the city now. He lives about 2 blocks away from here. And my daughter's in high school. She's a junior. And I also teach yoga and meditation. I trained to be a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher. I run a podcast on meditation. And I also started an institute in South Bay to teach people to learn to serve. Just like you're humans, you're born with 2 legs that are designed to walk, and yet your parents had to teach you to walk. We are a social species. We're designed to work and serve each other. But we're not taught that in school. So we created a school just to teach each other how to learn to serve each other. So that happened about last year. And we've graduated 20 people last year. This year, the class is about 42 people across the US. Today I'll be covering the basics of Hinduism, but being that you've already done Moksha Madness, probably going to skip that part. No, I'll be happy to take questions on Moksha as well if you're interested, or reincarnation, or any foundational belief in the Hindu tradition. But today I'm going to cover the basics of Hinduism, and like Ish said, we're going to be focused on the experiential part as well. You know, in the sense, what is our conception of God and divinity, and how can you experience that within yourself? Before I begin, I'm going to ask if is anyone here familiar with Hindus? Do you know a Hindu person? Have you ever met one? Yes, no? You have, right? Well, congratulations, you've just met one. So you can ask me all your questions. I'm happy to answer those for you. What would you like me to cover in addition to whatever I just told you? Are there questions that are pressing that you really do need to ask? And now that I'm here, this is a good time. Don't be shy.
You want to talk about with a partner and kind of vet your questions first and be like, this is kind of stuff I kind of want to know and see if there's more people that kind of want to hear about something. You want to talk with a partner now? Go. And I did say to ask any question, like when I was in India, I was asking some questions that people got offended.
Oh, yeah.
So I told them this is a safe space where we know we're here to learn.
That's right. That's why I disclaimed everyone. So
Yeah.
Go ahead and ask questions.
I asked some caste system questions when I was in India and people got really touchy.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to take it.
Yeah.
Cats and cows, not a problem. All right, scissors one, right? No? You were paper, were you not?
It was a really so.
Did you move that? Actually, like what do you,
Good.
Go ahead.
just like about reincarnation and stuff, yeah, like, just like about the whole process.
The process of reincarnation.
Yeah.
All right, good. Happy to take that. Any other questions?
Oh.
Yes.
So like, I know like there are like many like different gods.
Okay. Do you mind if I use your board?
Of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
walk.
Actually, you can also like pull the projector down and it'll roll up. There you go. I'll go with that.
All right. All right. So I'll get reincarnation. Your question was lots of gods.
Yeah. So like, how do you like manage to like pray to all of those gods, or like,
Great question.
do you pray to all of those gods?
Oh yeah. I'll answer. You have a question?
In America, there's like a lot of the 1% rules the political classes. In India, since like the caste system, although it's like abolished, it's still pretty evident.
Sure.
Is it like similar there?
Sure. Yeah. Good. The other question? Yes.
Just like kind of going off of the caste system, like what that means to people still and how it's seen around places.
So what is it now? All right. There was another question that I kind of missed.
Yeah, for the so many gods, like, do you worship like a specific one, or do you just?
I had a question asked last semester after you came, and I did not know how to answer it.
Sure.
If souls get reincarnated, what happens with the creation of a new soul, like a new beings? How do those happen? Like new.
Okay. Yes. Yes, sir.
How much is yoga like part of your religious experience?
Okay. Okay. What else? Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How often do you meditate each day?
All right, I think that's a good collection of questions. If there are more pressing questions that come up, just remind me. And then also just remind me to answer any questions I have not got so far. All right. I will address those questions as we roll along. Let's begin from the beginning. The word Hindu is a word that other cultures have used about us, and we've sort of taken on and said, all right, we're Hindus. And the word Hindu itself comes from the river Sindhu, which is the river which is now in Pakistan, but that's the primary river around which the older civilization lived. And like how we might write Jesus, but say Jesus in some cultures, which is the J sound changes into H sound. It's the same where if you go west of the Sindhu, the S sound turns into an H sound. So they would call it the Hindu river. And if you go further out into the Roman regions, then the H sound disappears or evaporates and becomes I. So it becomes Indu. And so the Sindhu River people were known as Indians. And the Arabic people later would call us the Hindu people because they were the primary traders in the dark to Middle Ages period, or Middle Ages period. So the name stuck, which is what everyone calls the people of India as Hindus. But our own name for our tradition is Sanatana-Dharma. Sanatana-Dharma means, it's a very paradoxical pair of words, and I'll explain that as the first thing that I'm covering in today's talk. The tradition itself is very wide and expansive, and it encompasses a wide range of beliefs. You could be a believer, you could be a believer in many gods, you could be a believer in one God, zero gods, no gods whatsoever, never God. All of those traditions are within the full range of the Hindu tradition, and everything is acceptable, and nothing is sort of is limited out from the tradition. The books of the tradition, and again, this tradition goes back 5, 10, 15,000 years, depending on whose history you read, and so it's an oral tradition, right? And to the extent that that it predates the writing of books. Our tradition does not need books to be transmitted. It's transmitted orally and culturally. So a lot of cultural practices in our stories will automatically transfer the tradition. But there are hundreds or thousands of books that have been written down subsequently. So these are oral traditions that have been written down, and those are also part of the overall tradition. And each of those books could, interestingly, be interpreted by different people in different ways. So one of the highest, sort of most respected and universally sort of loved book in the Hindu tradition is the Bhagavad-Gita. And the Bhagavad-Gita could be read as in very different ways. As a materialist, you could kind of sort of read it you could read it in a Buddhist-like manner. You could read it in a everything is one, single creation kind of manner. And you could read it as, look, God himself came down and taught us this. All of those views are available in the Hindu tradition. And in fact, essays on previous books are a very popular thing. So there'll be some verses, they'll be explained by someone, and someone translates the explanation and writes his commentary on that, and eventually we have a pretty wide-ranging tradition. So let's come down to the first two words that I promised to sort for you. Sanatana-Dharma. Sanatan means eternal, and I'll explain what that means. And Dharma means order, but I'll explain what those two words mean. They don't quite mean eternal or order. What it means is, Sanatan means beyond time, outside of time. So if I tell you something today and it's Monday morning, so I say Donald Trump is president. It's true today, right? But come Friday, something happens and Donald Trump is no longer president, or 2 years from now, or 6 years from now, no longer president. Then is it true forever that Donald Trump is president forever? The answer is no. It's a time-dependent thing. It's true sometimes and it's not true other times. Would you agree? Right? So things that are not true all the time, in fact, things that have anything to do with time, are not considered true. Now, the meaning of that is a little more stark. I'm here today. I could be gone tomorrow. I will be gone at some point of some tomorrow in the future. So what is the truth of this physical body? And you'd say, well, not much. I was not there some time back. I'm there, and then I won't be there sometime later. So my being here is like Monday or Tuesday. It comes and goes, right? So what is the truth of this physical body? If you think about truth with a capital T in that manner, then you realize that it's dependent on a few variables, so it's not really true. It's not an upstanding, freestanding truth. It's a contingent truth. So the first part of Sanatana-Dharma is Sanatana, which is eternal. Not timeless as in I don't have time, not timeless as in long time, timeless as in nothing to do with time. It exists outside of time, time exists in that reality, in that truth. So that's the first thing, which is the search for the eternal is a key driver in the Hindu tradition. The second is dharma. Dharma is a very complex word, and it can mean many things to many people. Has anyone been to UK? Yeah? All right. Have you noticed anything as soon as you came out of the airport? Something about the traffic?
Busy.
It's busy for sure. What else?
She has her hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It goes the opposite way.
They're driving on the wrong side,
Yeah.
right?
And people walk on the other side too.
Which is crazy. So people drive on the wrong side of the road in UK and India, right? Or is it? Are they driving on the wrong side of the road? They're driving on their right side of the road. We're driving on the wrong side as far as they're concerned, right? So space, time, and context, they determine what is true, what is the right thing to do, right? If the British Moses went up, a hill and came back and says, "Thou shalt drive on the left side of the road," well, then thou shalt drive on the left side of the road. That's just the law. And then here, if you drive on the right side, that's just the way it is. So the word dharma itself means order or law. And it's not law that came down from sort of a system. It's law that as humans many times we discover. We understand what the law is. We either understand it through trial and error. A culture that's been around for thousands of years makes a lot of errors and finds out a few things on the way. So that's trial and error. Another is divine revelation. So you have it revealed unto you that this is the truth, or this is true, or this is the right thing to do. And sometimes God Himself comes down and lays down the law. That might be the case. But what's the right thing to do? What is the relationship between me and you, people to people, objects to each other? That is dharma. And dharma, as you can guess from that definition of the word, is always changing. Always changing, always evolving. It's so complex that of the two large epics in the Hindu tradition, they're both about dharma, but one epic is explicitly about dharma. Huge, massive book, you could have 18, 24 volumes of it. The whole book is about dharma. And the way it's explained is in the way of conversations. A conversation between a husband and a wife, where the wife is asking, "Hey, what's the right thing to do in this case?" Or a driver in his ride is like, if you're in an Uber and your Uber driver starts asking you, "So what is the right thing to do?" Right? So a lot of different contexts. A big epic is written about explaining what is the right thing to do, because it's so complex. Right? And so the Hindu tradition lies in the middle of this, which is that which never changes and that which is always changing. That which is true, that which is truth with a capital T, and that which is true, except it's changing all the time with a small t. Right? That full range is the breadth of the Hindu tradition. And in that sense, because a lot of this is a process of discovery and insight, it isn't just limited to the people of the Hindu region. It's a universal truth that we discover. Just like the law of gravity does not belong to the family of Newton Incorporated. Right? Once it's discovered, we all understand what to do with it. It's the same with these laws, eternal laws. So that's the Hindu tradition. It's always been concerned about the timeless and the contextual at the same time. And these questions might seem arcane or strange. You would think, why should anyone care about the timeless or the ever-changing? And it's a fair question to ask at your age. But over time, what you'll realize is, what is the right thing to do is a question you're going to be faced with all the time. Right? And the way to answer that might be, what is the morally the right thing to do? What is ethically the right thing to do? What is legally the right thing to do? And in many cases, those might be each giving you a different answer, right? So you need a moral compass. You need a way of finding out what the right thing for you to do in any moment is. And for that, the finding of the way and finding of the method to find the way are all part of the Hindu tradition. So meditative practices, devotional practices, action practices, all of those are, and knowledge is all baked into the Hindu tradition in many different ways. I'm going to pause. I covered a lot of very serious ground right now, so I'm going to see if you guys are still awake. All right, questions or comments? You good so far? All right, so the Hindu name for our tradition is Sanatana-Dharma. If you like, I can write it up, but it might already be in your book. Would you like me to write it?
Yeah.
Right, just write it. S-A-N-A-T-A. Sanatana-Dharma. The word dharma is often translated as religion. It is not. Religion is a narrow word. It has a certain context in which it's used. Dharma is a very wide word. Dharma means that which holds together. Any glue. Any social glue is dharma. Any law, the book of the Constitution, US Constitution is dharma in that sense because it holds the politics, the society together. And so dharma is a very, very expansive, very wide word. And that's the tradition. Good so far? Let's move on to the next subject, which is what did you have for breakfast? Did anyone have avocados for breakfast? Someone should have had avocados. No? All right. But the deal, I did, by the way. The deal with avocados is if you go to Costco and buy avocados, you always get them in a place where they're essentially a lethal weapon. You throw it at someone and you might knock them out because they're super hard, rock solid. You bought those avocados?
Yes.
Yeah. And what happens after you buy them?
Like really green.
They're really green, just the
You have
color of
to-
your shirt, and then
Yeah. You have to wait a long time.
how long?
Like a few days, like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, probably longer,
Yeah.
until it's soft and
Yeah.
mushy and creamy. So my question to you, dear friends, is who ripens the avocado? Time ripens the avocado?
Yeah.
All right, what else? How does the avocado now know it's time? It's not, did it come in with a strapped Apple Watch? It says, hey, it's about time.
Then wrap.
Do you choose when an avocado is like good enough for you?
Oh yeah, but what ripens the avocado? Who ripens the avocado? Yes,
Is it like the nut inside?
yeah, maybe the nut, who knows?
Itself.
Itself, the avocado kind of knows that it needs to ripen. So there's but is it true, universally true, when you buy a rock hard avocado from Costco, within a few days, weeks, months, maybe a couple of years, they'll ripen? It always happens, right? It's the law. So the question is, what is the order? What is the determinant of this ripening of the avocado? Who ripens the avocado? Who laid down the law that the avocado must ripen in a few days, and who's keeping track of it? This universe is not chaotic. There is order to it. Avocados bought at the store always ripen. And that's a very important question, even though it might seem like breakfast to you, which is who ripens the avocados? What is the order which runs this entire creation? If everything did not have order, you'd be flying right now because gravity would, we ran out of gravity, sorry, no gravity for you, right? But there's gravity, you're sitting down, things are not chaotic, and things seem to work in a certain manner. It's the same with language. When I use a word to describe something, isn't it shocking? Isn't it shocking that I use a word and you know exactly what it means? How is it that you understand something that I'm saying, even though you're not able to read my brainwaves? We exchange words and you understand what it means. What is the order?
Well, can't you say that with like anything? Like even if we could fly, wouldn't that be an order?
That would be an order if we could fly. The question is it randomly changing? The question is it chaos all around, or there is some sense of order that's running this universe? Right? And that searching for order some of the earliest poems in the Indian Hindu tradition are about order. The order of the seasons, the order in which things happen. When you do something, something happens as a result of that. And the question is, what maintains this order? How has this order come to be? So a lot of the Hindu cosmology begins by asking this question: how the heck is my avocado ripening on time, on cue? Right? And you realize that this entire creation works on some sort of inner logic, which we are able to intuit somehow that there's some sort of inner logic to things. Right? And then the next question would be, there must be either a logician or some sort of logical sense-making that has caused this to be. And then you question how that came to be, and how that came to be. And eventually you'll come to the question of, what is all this that I see all around? And that question, not the avocado question, but what is the true nature of everything, is the beginning of the Hindu tradition, of insight in the Hindu tradition. We have the word twice born in the Western tradition as well. In the Hindu tradition also there's a concept of a twice born. Dvija, twice born is the word. And Dvija means someone who's been born again because they just woke up to the real question, which is, what is all this that I see? Athat Brahma Jignasa. And now the curiosity about the true nature of reality. And the meditative part of the Hindu tradition begins from this point on, where you start to figure out, okay, there must be something deeper than what's visible to me. Something's going on behind everything. What's animating everything? How is it that this Mr. G is sitting here, and one day Mr. G, exactly this body, the same body weight, same lack of hair on the head, but totally dead? What is it that animates this creature? Right? Interesting aside, by the way, the word animate comes from anima, which is pneuma, which is air, which is also in Sanskrit we use prana, same word, which is air. Another word for this is ruh. So all the breath that animates us. So the question is, what animates me? What is it that I see all around me, and what animates me? This question became the central question in most of the early hymns of the Hindu tradition. A lot of the rituals were to build up to the asking and answering of this question. And the problem with asking and answering this question is it cannot happen in words. If I write it down, I've immediately lost it. I'm giving you a dead body. The living experience of this question and its answer can only be transmitted experientially. You can only receive the answer from inside you. I can only help you bring together the conditions of asking and answering. So the Hindu tradition of a lot of the ritual worship and everything begins with this, which is, what is this order? What makes everything work? What is all this around me? Why is there so much diversity of form, and yet when I look out from my eyes and I see you, sometimes I see you, and sometimes I see that all is me. One of the early findings, Mahavakyas in the Hindu tradition, is Aham Brahmasmi. I am all creation. And that might sound like nonsense. Today, sitting here, looking at me, you might think this man is out of his mind, because if you're all creation and I'm all creation, then what are we talking about here? Right? But I can promise you, as a yogi and as someone who can tell you from direct experience, that one day if you practice what I tell you to practice, you will get to the same answer, which is you will experience the oneness of everything. Which is we common put this joke, by the way, make me one with everything, but it is true. That experience is possible. When you feel one with everything, you feel a connection that you haven't experienced before, but which is undeniable later. So that finding that connection between everything is important in the Hindu tradition as well. So I've covered two things so far: Sanatana-Dharma and the question of who ripens the avocado. Finding the inherent order in everything is important to the Hindu tradition, because that tells us what to do right now. Other than that, it's chaos. If I said there's no order to anything, I could do whatever the heck I want, right? And so one school of Hindu tradition, of the 6 main schools of philosophy in the Hindu tradition, one of them is literally this. It's a very materialistic school. It's called Charvaka. And their thing is, well, take that, raise a lot of debt, eat a lot of food, have a lot of enjoyment, and then die. Because who cares? There's nothing after. You may as well take a lot of debt and, and just again spend it all. Because once you're materialistic, what are the rules that govern your life? What is the purpose of your life? It is to enjoy and get to the maximum enjoyment that you can. So you would eat, drink, and be merry, for sure. That's a materialistic conception of reality. And it has its limitations. As anyone who lives in this society, Western or otherwise, knows, there are limits to materialism. Why? Because it does not truly bring satisfaction and happiness. And so in the Hindu tradition also, there have been materialists, deniers of any transcendent reality whatsoever. And the conclusion of the broader tradition is that it doesn't quite work. It does not bring you lasting satisfaction. I'll ask you a question. Does anyone like sweet stuff, candy? Yes? Okay, someone who's had the experience of having one candy may raise one hand, one finger. 2 candies, 2 fingers. And 2 candies are twice as much fun as 1 candy? Kinda not, right? Okay, how about 3 candies? Is that twice as much? Not really. There's some sort of tapering off that you're noticing, right? At 10 candies, you're about to sue me because I'm probably causing some damage to your internal systems, right? You're not. So you see what's wrong with the material world? You can't keep consuming. If you keep consuming, it doesn't bring you infinite happiness, infinite satisfaction. You keep eating and you're still hungry. By eating, I mean consuming, right? And so that's the limit of materialism, and that will be visible to you as soon as you get into the workplace. That consuming is a great way to enjoy this individual moment, but it's not a very satisfactory thing. Consumerism has its limits, because you can't consume more and more. And that's why you'll see some of the richest people seem to be the unhappiest. Why is that? Some of the most powerful people seem to be the unhappiest. Why is that? It's that richness and power by themselves do not bring satisfaction. So these questions also the Hindus thought about, because again, it's been a very long and rich culture and tradition. And so we had time to explore these questions and come to our answers, and we realized, yeah, not quite. So that's part 2. I'm going to pause here. How are you doing?
Good.
So far, so good. Now coming to the meat and potatoes, or in my case, I'm vegetarian, just the potatoes part of the appropriate in an Irish school. Potatoes part. So I'm going to start answering a few of your questions. All right, yoga. Whose question was on yoga? Who somebody asked me. You'd ask me a question on. So the yoga tradition is a very expansive tradition, from Tantra on one side to the postural yoga and meditative practices, to Buddhism, to the wider sort of Hindu tradition of meditative practices. Very wide stream of traditions. And all of that is core to the insight finding in the Hindu tradition. Very core. The Hindu tradition would not be what it is without yoga. But the insights that are found are universally applicable. For example, the constitution of the psychic body, there's zero awareness of that in the Western culture. I rephrase that. There's about 2% awareness of that in the Western culture, because you do know the heart. Has anyone experienced a broken heart, or a heavy heart, or a cold heart, or a rock solid heart, or a melting heart, or a jumping heart? This heart, not this physical left side of the body heart, but this heart, the psychic heart in the center of your chest. You are kind of sort of aware of it, but you're not really. The yogis could x-ray their entire body and everybody else's body, because they built in the ability to intuitively perceive. They could see you and they could know exactly why you're here, because that's how sensitive their own internal organs of perception have become. So the yoga tradition is core to the Hindu tradition. It's not an add-on, it's not outside, it's how it's built in. The broad Buddhism itself is one of the streams of the Hindu tradition. All the technologies of Buddhism come from the same underlying system. So I think I've answered one question. Did I answer your question? That's what you wanted to know? All right, good. How often do I meditate? Meditate is a sort of English word. Marcus Aurelius wrote a book on meditations. Meditation could mean anything. Contemplation is meditation in English. But in the Hindu tradition, the word we use, and the yoga tradition had extremely nuanced understanding of the human psyche. So we would not use one word when 40 words would suffice. So we have a lot of words for meditation. Withdrawing attention like a turtle. Have you seen a turtle which can withdraw itself into the shell? Withdrawing attention from the world outside is one kind of meditation. Resting the awareness on a deity inside or outside is another kind of meditation. Bringing the awareness and let it illuminate the entire being is another kind of meditation. And then being one with everything is another kind of meditation. Those are very specific stages in the journey. So your question to me was a more technical question. Whose question was on meditation? Was it yours? Somebody, your question. So I meditate several times a day. I do different things. I do the sitting meditation once a day. I do chants. I do devotional sort of work as well in front of a deity. All of those are meditation practices. And then for true yogis, 24/7, every piece of work you do is meditation. Everything you do is meditation. It's just because once you're engaged and aware, then everything is. Because once you come to the realization that there is no other, all is one, all is the self, then everything is meditation because you're always engaged with the self. All right, I got 2 out of 5, I think. All right. I got 3 out of, okay, 2. Sorry. Okay. All right. So I watched this documentary on TV. This was a BBC documentary about houses in Pakistan. Not relevant what the documentary was, but Pakistan is a neighboring country to India, and culturally they're the same. They're Indian in their culture. So I was watching it, and I found this interesting old man, very touching story of this man who in the late 60s, early 70s, took a bus out of Pakistan and then found his way to Sweden, I think, which is where a lot of Pakistani people were going at that time, as an illegal immigrant. And then this is 40 years later, and the country is celebrating their immigrants, and he's being celebrated. So he tells the story. He tells the story of when he first reached this new country. He was very afraid for the first 6 months. He'd get out of his home and he'd see a cop. He'd get into a bus and he'd see a cop. He'd go to the post office, he'd see a cop. He'd go anywhere, he'd see a cop. And he thought they're about to bust him anytime. For the first 6 months, he was just always afraid. But then as he stayed there longer, he realized, well, they're not all out to get me. The guy in the bus is actually a conductor. Right? The guy in the post office is just the postman. Right? The traffic guy is just the traffic guy. No one's out doing, the immigration raids. These guys have other things to do. They're part of the Swedish government for sure, but they're not all cops. There is a cop. These are not the cops. So he eased out, and of course, everything worked out for him. That was an interesting story for me because it's the same with understanding the Hindu view of God. It might surprise you to know that the Hindu view of reality and God is that there is only one reality. All is one. And if all is one, what is the room for millions of gods? You would say none. You would say there's only one God. And Hindus do believe and understand that there's only one God. But once you've been in the God business for a few thousand years, you kind of realize that God is not just this amorphous, indefinable experience. That God has different shapes and forms and things that God does. There is creation happening in God. There is sustenance happening. In my heart sits God and animates me. There is destruction happening because only when you destroy it can new things be made. So all of those things are duties of God. Energy that animates a dead body and makes it living. That energy itself is also a form of God. So once you've been in the God business for thousands of years, you kind of realize that you could say all is God, but it doesn't help you. I could say, for example, if I'm a modern scientist kind of guy, I'd say all is the universe. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, I say all is the universe. That's great for a few decades, but then you kind of get bored because it doesn't help you get stuff done. Oh, the universe is this, oh, the universe is that, oh, the universe has universal laws. That's great, but you kind of want to graduate past that. And that's how the Hindu view of God is. That once your practice stabilizes, you begin to engage with God in ways that are different. And you get to understand the different qualities of God. Abundance is a property of God. Wisdom is a property of God. Infinite expansiveness is a property of God. Right? All of these may be understood differently. And all of those then become personified in the Hindu tradition. We engage with them as people. And the next question would be, why would you engage with gods as people? That's not the God's problem, it's how humans work. For example, I just used the universe in a sentence that you did not think twice about it. I said the universe is large, full stop. Did you ask me what that means? Did it strike you as being an odd sentence in any manner? No, you use the same rules of grammar. Which is, if I say this chair is small, or the parakeet is small, or this school is large, you're looking at an object and you're describing its properties, right? And that's how human language works. We're designed to think in a personified way. And even if it's an abstract concept like universe, we're still going to think about it in personified ways. So the Hindu view of a personal relationship with God is just this. That it is my connection with God. That's through the heart. And that's why I put your teacher's name up there on the board, which is, it turns out, Ish is one of the words we use for God. Ishta is another word we use for God. You didn't know that? You're welcome, people. And, yeah. So Ish means that which is dear to the heart. And one of the earliest scriptures, 18 verses, is just this. It's called Ishavasya Upanishad, Isha Upanishad. And it just says this. And that Ish is a personal connection to the divine. Because how else are you going to experience? What are the tools with which you're going to experience other than through your heart? All right, I covered a lot of ground, and a lot of this is philosophical matter. So I'm going to stop here and see if I've still kept you alive and awake. Questions or comments?
I'm just wondering, are there like any punishments, like if you do certain things?
Okay, so is there a proscribed activity that which you do and this bad stuff, right? Very nuanced question. It's a great question. It's a very nuanced question. Is there evil in the Hindu tradition is the real question. And in the Hindu tradition, evil is not as much of a problem as ignorance is.
As what?
Ignorance.
Okay.
Ignorance of your own true nature, of your own oneness with reality. So Maya, that which is not. Maya, the veil of ignorance, is the main problem. And the rules, when I said order, universe is order, right? The rules of the game are that if you do something wrong, it comes back to bite you in the posterior, right? And that's just how it works. And you would know that as XYZ is a female dog, what would you say? What is a female dog? Karma. Have you heard the word karma? Never heard the word karma? You heard the word karma?
Yes.
Yeah. Karma is a word that comes in the Hindu tradition. Karma is what you do. Kar literally means hand. So karma is that what you do. And that what you do, the universe is designed in a way that all the calculations work. And if you do something wrong here, it comes back to bite you somewhere in the posterior. It will be taken care of. But knowing the right thing to do is the challenge. You don't know what the wrong thing to do is. because you're doing something that's your nature. So all the Hindu tradition is about knowing your true nature and removing this veil of ignorance that separates you from me. Once you remove the veil, whatever you do is whatever